yes, master. Grasshopper must not be late. The rest of us don't have wheelchair parking. I mean, let him try to hoof it in on time from outer Mongolia. Who elected him hall monitor anyway?
Diversity, harassment, 2 words you hear a lot these days. But what do they mean, and how do they affect you? In this program, we'll talk about diversity and cover the basics of workplace harassment. We'll review situations that involve challenging workplace dynamics and discuss what to do if you feel that you are being subjected to potential workplace harassment. And most importantly, we'll talk about how you can help prevent harassment at your job. Diversity doesn't just mean male versus female or employees of different races. Coworkers may come from different cultural backgrounds or have different religious beliefs or nationalities, ages, or physical abilities. These days, individuals are feeling empowered to assume non-traditional roles, and employers have created greater opportunities for those efforts to succeed. It is now a common experience to find yourself working side by side with others who are not just like you. An inclusive workplace can be a very positive thing, but it can also create friction. Let's face it, most of us have experienced some kind of work-related stress or conflict involving our coworkers. It's human nature. But when we fail to deal with our differences in a straightforward and professional way, small problems can quickly become big problems. And if a workplace is tainted by intolerance and discrimination, we don't get the best from others or ourselves. Take Howard and Matt. Howard seems to take it personally when Matt comes in late for work. Matt strikes back by attacking Howard's disability and heritage. Unfortunately, this is not the first time this has happened. Let's return to our story and observe Howard bringing an earlier concern to Lauren, the new head of his work group.
Hi, Howard.
So there's a new martial arts movie out.
Really?
They've all seen it.
Uh-huh.
So that means I have to listen to a bunch of jokers with fake accents playing Taekwondo all day.
Howard, I'm really sorry to hear that.
Especially Matt.
Well, sometimes people are just trying to be funny, and they say things without thinking.
Whatever.
It is apparent that Matt is engaging in behavior that Howard finds offensive. But there are additional factors involved. Did Howard make his concerns clear? Did he give Lauren a chance to help? Most employers have strong policies against workplace harassment. These policies remind employees to treat each other with courtesy and mutual respect, and outline what may or may not be considered workplace harassment. They also encourage employees to speak up immediately if something is bothering them. Of course, in an ideal situation, employees won't let resentments build. Often employees will work out their differences between themselves. But if that doesn't solve the problem, or if speaking directly to the harasser is uncomfortable for whatever reason, then employees should know that they can go to a supervisor or manager, or to anyone designated by the organization to handle human resources issues. Remember, harassment is not only sexual in nature. It is not limited to actions by supervisors, but can result from unwelcome and offensive behavior by coworkers as well, if the conduct is based on a protected category and is severe or pervasive. It can occur even if an offensive comment or gesture is not directly intended for the person who sees it or overhears it. For example, the conversation about the martial arts movie when Howard was nearby. Let's look at the basics. Workplace harassment involves conduct aimed at or involving any protected category under state or federal law. For example, federal equal opportunity law covers race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, among other protected categories. The Age Discrimination in Employment Act applies to persons age 40 and over, and the Americans with Disabilities Act covers employees with disabilities. In some states, employees are protected in additional categories such as sexual orientation, gender identity, or marital status. But it's not just about the law. Showing respect for others, regardless of any kind of difference, is always the right thing to do. Now, let's return to our story where we hear about another incident at Howard's workplace.
Lauren,
Yeah, Howard? What's up?
I guess they think this is funny.
Where did this come from?
I found it on my desk. I think it's Matt's little joke.
I guess I should talk to him.
Workplace harassment can be caused by what is often referred to as a hostile environment, a term which encompasses a wide scope of unwelcome and offensive conduct that is severe or pervasive and is based on a protected category. Items that may contribute to a hostile environment may include offensive objects that are brought into the workplace, cartoons, posters, cards, or mugs, for example, whether they are purposely meant to hurt someone or not. Verbal behavior based on a protected category can contribute to a hostile environment as well, such as derogatory comments, slurs, jokes, or offensive emails. Physical behavior could include rude facial expressions or gestures, unwelcome touching, or blocking someone's movements. In our story, Howard is now giving Lauren the opportunity to help solve the problem before it becomes more severe.
Okay. Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye. Hi, Howard. Can you shut the door? I just got off the phone with HR. Is it okay if we talk about what's been happening with Matt?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. How long has this been going on?
It's gotten worse since the new attendance policy went into effect. They still come in whenever they feel like it, and they harass me when I show up on time.
They?
Well, just Matt, really.
Have others seen it happening?
Ellen doesn't seem to go along with it very much. Neither does Frank.
Okay. I'll talk to them. And I'll talk to Matt.
Okay.
I don't know what his problem is. I mean, I think it bothers him that I get more work done than he does. But I mean, just because he's been here forever.
Matt, I want you to know that I'm investigating the situation fairly, so I won't be jumping to any conclusions.
All right, I'm glad to hear that.
Which means you'll have the opportunity to fully explain this from your perspective, and that I'll also be talking to others. Who else can shed some light on this?
April doesn't put up with any of his bull. You should talk to her.
Okay, April. I'll talk to her.
Great.
But Howard does ask for it sometimes. I mean, he can be a real pain.
Matt has been quoted as having made those statements. April, have you been present when Matt, or anyone else here for that matter, has made unwelcome comments about a coworker's age, gender identity, color?
I used to think that Matt was kind of funny. But I guess he has been crossing the line lately.
He does this to everyone. It's not just Howard. No, he calls me Curly. But yeah, it bothers me.
Did you tell him that it bothers you?
With a guy like Matt, I just didn't want to make it any worse, you know?
Well, what you're talking about is not really a protected category, but it does add to a negative atmosphere.
Yeah, well, eventually, you just get immune to it.
I'm doing an investigation on possible harassment in our group. What can you tell me?
You're probably talking about Matt. He's always kidding around. He's like the class clown.
Does he make you uncomfortable?
Yeah. I mean, well, at first it really bothered me when he teased me about saying grace at lunch.
And how does he tease you?
But he doesn't really mean any harm.
Ellen, it's not his intentions that matter. It's how his conduct affects everyone around him. So how does he tease you?
It's just the things that he says sometimes.
Lauren is being careful to get the full story. After interviewing several more witnesses, Lauren is able to conclude that Matt has established a pattern of inappropriate comments. In this case, after Lauren consults with HR and senior management, It is decided that Matt will receive a written warning and counseling on the company's policies on discrimination and harassment.
Yeah, but how come Howard gets special parking privileges? Half the time he doesn't even use his cane. Besides, I mean, it's not like it harmed anybody. Nobody quit or anything.
We're not just expecting common courtesy here. Harassment's against the law.
All right. I'm sorry. I didn't think anybody would take it this seriously.
Matt, few things at work are more serious than following this policy. It affects other people's jobs and touches on important rights. You need to understand that.
Okay.
Even though Matt thought no real harm occurred, Howard was hurt by his actions. Hopefully, he now understands that his behavior was inappropriate. What's more, Howard actually helped Matt by speaking up. Matt could have lost his job if this behavior had continued. Now Lauren will be watching to make sure no one retaliates against Howard for coming forward. An employee is protected from retaliation for filing a complaint or raising a concern about discrimination or harassment, or even for taking part in an investigation when acting in good faith. No one should ever have to regret speaking up to protect their rights in the workplace.
Matt's conduct was determined to be inappropriate. He'll be dealt with accordingly. Howard, tell me, what further outcome would you like to see in order for this workplace to be harassment-free for you?
It's gotten better already. I think the others can see what's been going on now. I guess it's up to Matt at this point.
Okay.
Howard?
Never seen you here so early. Is your watch fast?
Yeah, well, listen. I'm sorry about what happened. I was just kidding around. Well, actually, I suppose sometimes I was ticked off, but it won't happen again.
Well, that's good to hear.
All right. I'm gonna go back to work. If you want to talk about it, just whenever.
Thanks, Matt.
When employees like Howard and Matt participate in their employer's attempts to respond to and eliminate workplace harassment, the end result is not only good business practice, it creates a better workplace environment for everyone. An inclusive workplace not only welcomes differences, but also maintains standards of courtesy and professionalism. With Matt and Howard, it looks like the foundation has now been laid for them to better understand and work out their disagreements. By treating each other with respect, they'll contribute to an environment where everybody can do their best work, regardless of who they are. So, what does all this mean for you? First, be familiar with your organization's policies on harassment and diversity. They often cover more than you think and help create a positive atmosphere that goes beyond mere compliance. Next, if a coworker's actions or comments are unwelcome and offensive, speak up about your concerns. If you don't feel comfortable talking to that person directly, you can usually go to your supervisor or human resources or anyone else up the chain of command. And what if someone complains about your behavior? Well, the short answer is stop. If you disagree with a complaint or have questions about it, talk to your manager or HR. Make sure your behavior is courteous and that you keep the lines of communication open. It's good to be friendly and to be yourself, but also be aware of others' perspectives and sensibilities. If you think you've hurt someone's feelings, unintentionally or otherwise, apologize and commit to improving your working relationship as you move forward. By following these guidelines, you'll help create an environment where everyone is respected and everyone feels they're part of the team. After all, we're all in this together.